Testing, testing, and we are live.
We are live.
We welcome us back in the year 2026.
And we have a special guest today.
Hold on, don't tell them who the guest is yet, Jay. Okay, you always like to jump the gun.
I'm excited.
I'm excited. Did you have a good New Year's Eve?
I did. It was relaxing. It was quiet.
You had a quiet New Year's Eve? There were no fireworks or anything?
Went to bed before 12.
Wow, you really are not the party animal you used to be.
Not at all.
Anyway, this is We're Not Famous with Sam and Jernavis, and now we have an amazing guest today, an entrepreneur, a businessman, a family man, a father, a friend of my family, someone I've known for a very long time, since I can remember. I've always admired him. I've always looked up to him, even though I am probably about 6 inches taller than him. This guy is an incredible entrepreneur.
I've always looked up to everyone.
Welcome to the show, John Osher.
John Osher.
Well, it's great to be here, and I'm honored to be the first person of 2026
Yes.
to do a podcast with you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is a good omen. A good omen with a good Osher. So John and I actually spent New Year's Eve together last night, or a part of it, and we got to talking, and I mean, we're gonna hopefully share some of what we talked about last night, but this is an incredible story.
First of all, tell me, how did you guys meet? I know your father. Probably there's a connection there.
Well, we were his father, Bob, and I were in the toy industry together.
Okay.
And I had a toy company, but his father was famous for being the father of remote control cars.
Wow.
He brought all the coolest cars every year. Every year you'd wait and see all the cars that flipped over on walls and this and that. And his father, Bob, coordinated with Japanese companies and designers, and the whole industry would look forward to seeing the commercials and the new cars that Bob brought out. So
Really?
I was very happy to be friends of his.
When did you meet my dad?
Well, when I was in the toy industry, which was from 1988 to 96, so pretty early on. And I also met your father, who was
My uncle. Oh, you mean my dad's father?
I mean your grandfather.
Yeah.
Oh,
Your
wow.
grandfather, who was
Okay.
president of a toy company. I'm trying to remember, New York-based toy company. And
Playmates or something? Was it?
I don't know, but I've known him for years, and I knew your dad's brother, David, who was was also an inventor of many famous toys.
Okay.
So you guys are the family I should be interviewing.
That's good. Good stuff. And you owned. Oh, okay. Before we jump there, let's go back, sir. Can we start off, learn a little bit more about your upbringing? Where were you born and raised?
Well, I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. Actually, I was born in New York. My father was a neurosurgeon who, when I was born, was a resident at Columbia Presbyterian. So I was in New York for about a year, my first year, and grew up in Cincinnati, one of four boys.
Four.
Are the oldest or?
Just as a side story, I'm one of four boys. I had four sons, and my sons had five sons.
No.
So we had 13 straight boys. And if I really wanted to make a living, I would have made a bet on that.
No girls at all.
Then we just, after 13 boys, we have a granddaughter. And
Oh, she's gonna be spoiled. I know she's spoiled.
she gets very good treatment.
Got it. And your four brothers?
I had three brothers. There
Three
were four
brothers?
of us, yeah.
Got it. And what did your parents do?
Well, my
dad
father
was a
was a
neurosurgeon.
neurosurgeon. My mother was a writer, and it was an interesting family because I grew up in an area where most of my friends went to camps and they flew to different places. We did camping trips every year. The whole family would pack up for a month in a Ford station wagon, and we covered over the years. We covered the whole United States. Four boys fighting with each other in the car.
Wow.
And
Are you still close with your brothers?
well, two passed away, but we actually didn't grow up that close. But we're all still family. But we didn't grow up that close. But it was a great background to have, having seen the whole United States camping together, and which was a kind of an alien experience for other people in our neighborhood that we grew up with.
Got it. And what were you like as a child? Quiet? Were you?
The most spectacular thing about me was my size. I was very small.
All right.
And it probably affected me more than anything in my life.
So was he actually. He was actually tiny.
I was really small. And because of that, I was my parents' favorite.
Okay.
I don't think I don't know if they felt sorry for me or whatever, but I always tried to overcome. I was an athlete. I was eventually in high school, I was the smallest basketball player in the city of Cincinnati League in all the public schools.
You played in high school basketball?
Yeah. I had actually, not to brag, but I actually had a record that has never been beaten.
Which is?
I had the highest shooting percentage in history. I was 2 for 2. That included
100%.
included a 30-foot two-pointer because we didn't have three-pointers,
Right.
and a 20-foot left-handed hook on the baseline.
What?
That was my first religious experience.
Okay. Okay. Who was your favorite basketball player?
Well,
during that
Oscar
time?
Robertson.
Oscar Robertson. I think
Yeah.
your father said the same thing.
And Jack Twyman, because I grew up with the Cincinnati Royals, but we grew up with Oscar in college, and he's a wonderful man. He still is.
Okay. Wow.
Is he still around, Oscar Robertson?
Yes, he's still alive.
Did you ever get to meet him? Or
Yeah, he was actually on the board of one of my first companies.
no way.
How did that come to life?
I think one of our investors was doing some business with Oscar with building a neighborhood or doing something, and he said, "Why don't you have Oscar on your board?" And I said, "Well, it would be an honor."
Right.
Does that? Yeah. Well, he averaged a triple double, right? Is that?
Yeah,
him?
he was the
Yes.
first. I think he was the
He,
first.
Pound for pound, he might have been. You'd have to put him with the greatest players
That's
of
what
all
they
time.
say. That's what they say. Michael
He was
Jordan.
because wasn't even 6'5", and he'd averaged 10 rebounds, and he wasn't overly fast.
Mm-hmm.
He just was like Larry Bird, had this incredible court vision and reflexes.
Yeah. Hobbies. What were your hobbies in high school?
Well, I don't know if I had hobbies. I always had businesses. Since I was 5 years old, I started businesses.
Wow.
So all through high school, we would do something. I may have mentioned to you last night when I was 5 years old, I had my first business, although I think I was 6, and that is that my parents would go to an art school class every Tuesday night at the Cincinnati Art Museum, and they would paint pictures of nude women. And at the end of the 3-month course, they brought all the paintings back and put them in the attic, and I'd charge my friends a nickel apiece to see the nude paintings.
What?
So I actually started in porn, and I've never had better margins.
They say that about the porn industry. Yeah.
Right.
But it actually it's even though it's a good story, it's an important fact, and that is that from early on I had successes starting things, which made life. I was never afraid of starting a business. It became a natural thing to do, whether we were shoveling snow, raking leaves, parking cars at the ballpark. We had a tricky way of making money parking cars at the ballpark.
You said something to me that you've always been rich for your circumstances.
Right.
Like when you were 6, you were the richest 6-year-old.
Well, I was the richest 6-year-old because I had 30 nickels, and back then fudge sickles cost a nickel, and that was my most important product to buy.
Yeah.
And so
You
I
could
was
buy 'em in bulk
fudge
and then-
sickle rich. But I think as far as being an entrepreneur is a businessman, and the grade is making a profit, and so my aim was always to be wealthy within the context of my life at the time, which when I was 5 or 6, having 30 nickels was wealthy. At different times, through school and college, it would be the same thing.
My question is, did you work jobs or did you always work for yourself?
I never had a job, mainly because I never qualified for one. It's a joke, but it's true. I never had a resume, and I did apply for 2 jobs with family businesses and got turned down.
Oh, wow. So someone else was an entrepreneur in your family also?
No, with
well,
other family
I
business.
had my father was a surgeon.
Okay.
And most of the older members of my family were either surgeons or butchers originally, and many people would make the comment, of course, that's the same. But the butcher side started a kosher meat business called Best Osher Sinai. They really were ultimately as big as Hebrew National. They became a big company.
Wow.
And I did apply for a job there once.
Okay.
And I think I was the first person in family history to be turned down. But not because it was personal. It was just it was at the end of them. They had too many family members.
Right. Were they public, the company?
They were sold to Sara Lee eventually, so they became part of it.
Are they still around?
No, Sara Lee ruined the company in about 4 years.
Got
As I
it.
said, at the time they sold, Hebrew National had half the country and Best Sinai had half the country.
Right.
So in high school, you didn't like play sports.
No, we played basketball.
Play basketball. But did you go? You didn't pursue any sports in college. How did you make the decision?
I dreamt of being a professional basketball player at 5'3" until
Could have been Muggsy
until I
Bogues.
until I was about 24, and I realized I was older than a lot of the players, and I was now 5'5". But,
Got it.
I was a baseball player too, and
Okay.
shortstop, and went to camp here to Dodger Town in Devere Beach,
Okay.
which back then was the Brooklyn Dodgers training camp. They had a summer camp for baseball prodigies when they were young, and I did that too. But I think it was part of it was all trying to overcome my size.
Got it.
Right. I have another question. Because, your dad is a surgeon, which, you go to school for, 10 years maybe. And being an entrepreneur wasn't cool up until recently. Like, recently now everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. But in the 70s and 80s, I felt like it was kind of outcasts.
I can tell you a good story that backs up with just what you said. I guess it was about 1985, maybe it was 1982. I had a business, and I applied and got into Harvard Business School, had a 3-week, actually it was three 3-week sessions for, I guess they were presidents or owners of small business. Back then, small business was defined as $3 million to $75 million, and I think we were closer to the 3. But I remember that we'd go to these classes and we'd be in this room that almost had glass walls or all 4 sides, and they'd bring the MBA students around to look in at like we're zoo animals, like the entrepreneurs. Look what these guys look like, and and really it was so focused at that time, the business schools, on big business and corporate business, and now it's biggest part of the prestige of the MBA programs is who has the best entrepreneurship programs, which is a little tricky because I'm not sure entrepreneurship can really be learned or it's something you're born with.
Well, that was I was going to
ask that question.
Okay, do you think you're born an entrepreneur?
I think even though I've spent a lot of years teaching entrepreneurship at different MBA programs, I think the actual personality of an entrepreneur you're born with. I think, but you have to remember that being an entrepreneur is a businessman. And going to business school and learning so much more about business, even though it costs you a lot to go to school, it costs you a lot not to in mistakes in learning. So it's a question that even though I would go to the schools, and I'm going back again in January in a few weeks to go back to the Harvard Business School.
Okay.
To learn or to teach?
I don't know if you could ever say that the best entrepreneurs come from Harvard or Wharton or, they come from anywhere. So,
Wow. That's interesting because you hear that all the time. Are entrepreneurs born, or are they made?
But I just think it's the personality, and I'm friends with a lot of successful entrepreneurs, including your dad and and your uncle. But many others, and there's a certain trait that kind of became the theme of whenever I speak at schools, and that is a personality that finds a way. That no matter what happens, because as the entrepreneur, you're really on your own, and when there's problems, which every business attempt has at times, you have to find a way, and the ones that are successful are the ones that find a way. No matter, and there's no formula, there's no menu as to how to start a business and how to start your particular business, but every one of them comes up with problems that are beyond the entrepreneur's experience. or even intelligence, and you have to find a way. And that's that's the commonality that maybe you're born with. So,
so you're a pornography salesman, and when you're 6 years old, then what were some of the other businesses you did in high school?
We were always selling things.
Okay.
Okay. I can't remember what. We were always selling things. I had a friend who lived across the street from me, whose parents owned a toy company. Now, the toy company happened to become a very big company, but back then it was small. It was called Kenner Products.
Okay.
And when they first moved across the street, it was before they had Play-Doh, and before they had
Play-Doh.
Batman toys, and they had, they were eventually bought by Hasbro. And, became a big company, but we used to go down to the factory on Saturday mornings. My friend who lived across the street, I don't know how old we were, 10, 12, 11, and we'd put together squirt guns that shot around the corner. So I'd aim at, I'd aim at Sam. Well, you'd have to be sitting over here, but I'd aim at Sam, and I'd hit you sitting over here.
So it'd come out the side of the gun.
Yeah. Okay. So we would take the ones that were slightly defective and sell them in the neighborhood. They worked, but they weren't good enough to. They weren't good to sell.
So you would take the products that got messed up.
That's the type of thing we always did. We always found a way to. And back then, also the company they just developed Easy Bake Oven, which you probably know.
Easy Bake
Oven. Yeah. But did you choose a career path when you graduated college, or
I never had, because I always had these businesses, and I was fortunately always successful in the end. Didn't mean I didn't have failures within a business.
Right.
I never thought of doing anything but the next project. Whatever it was. And I didn't worry about, how will I find one? Because it just became, from an early age, it became the norm. I can't say that this is the most common way that entrepreneurs grow up. Many of them have a much more fearful effort, and that is they go to school, they may get an MBA, they may not, they get a job in an industry, let's call it Procter Gamble, and they have a bunch of friends, and they see that there's a better way to make a soap product or do something. Why don't we break off? But at the time that they're thinking of doing this, they also have a wife, they have kids, they have a mortgage, and that's a much more fearful and no experience as an entrepreneur. And some find some great success. Many don't, because they're trained in corporate thinking rather than entrepreneurial thinking. But I found what I had was a gift, that I was born with doing these things since I was young, because it made it easier and natural. I never thought of. I had friends that all went to medical school. They went to accountants and lawyers and this and that. I never thought about it, and I don't think my parents ever thought about it. They always assumed, because it was always my nature. They always assumed that would happen. They even assumed I'd eventually take care of the family. But
so they kind of knew that you were going to.
Yeah, but I don't know how they knew, because
right. I'm about to ask you that. You know,
it just was.
He has three other. I mean, it's kind of interesting how. Let me ask this: in college, you started a vintage clothing store.
I had
Jay does his research.
Two college business. So when I went to Wisconsin, I went to 3 colleges, all undergraduate, 7 years, and and I was in pre-med, and you never want to go to a doctor who spent 7 years in pre-med, first of all. But when I was at Wisconsin, my first 2 years in college, Wisconsin was one of the hip schools, like Berkeley, NYU.
It still is, I would say, yeah.
Where the trends would start, and and the hippies would start, all this stuff. And before those years at Wisconsin, there was no such thing really as earrings. Earrings were for old women who had a thing they'd screw on, and they were usually very unhip things. There was no industry for earrings. And while I was at Wisconsin, suddenly all the girls started getting their ears pierced at Berkeley, Wisconsin, NYU.
This is the 70s?
This was the 60s.
Oh, 60s, okay.
The 60s. I'm really old. You didn't realize what you're getting into with this interview. But they all start getting their ears pierced, and then they go out and they buy a bunch of these. Back then, they were like $4 or $5 pairs. They had a silver post or a gold post, and a monkey or a little ship, or all these cutesy things. And after 2 years, where I was never a great student. I was practically a professional poker player at Wisconsin.
Were you?
And I paid for tuition. Now it's interesting because I paid for my tuitions when I went there, but it was $500 a semester, not $50,000. It was a lot cheaper then.
Yeah, for sure.
But after 2 years there, I felt I was too addicted to poker, and I decided to transfer back home to the University of Cincinnati. And I thought about this earring thing. I said, Cincinnati's not one of the hip schools, but they do follow. So I got the idea of opening up an earring store with the expectation that the opportunity was there, that this would pass, that Cincinnati would, the girls there would also want to get their ears
The
pierced.
trend would come to Cincinnati from Wisconsin. Yeah.
So I went and I found a little shoe shine parlor, old shoe shine parlor. That's how big it was, tiny. And I rented it. It was right on the edge of University of Cincinnati campus. It was not quite, but
you took
close.
a lease out, or
What's that?
you took a lease out on the.
Yeah, but I don't remember it being it wasn't a lease that held me down for the rest of my life. Yeah. I forget what it was, but anyway, I got it. I put black felt on the wall, and I went to New York with my mother. So my father wouldn't invest in it. My mother gave me $1,000. And we went to New York, and we went upstairs to these places that sold earrings for 19 cents a pair. And these little monkeys and chips and things that people were buying. So we bought a whole bunch of those, and we came back. And then I had to set the price for them. And this was a lesson that I learned for the rest of my life in business. Next door to my store, to my little shop called the Ear Hole, which had a sign.
That was the name, the Ear Hole.
Yeah, it had a sign that was a big ear hanging out, and below the ear there was an earring, which was a toilet float that hung from the wooden ear that looked just like, But next door it was before Kmart and Walmart really, and it was more of the 5 and 10 time, and they had a place called Stop and Shop, and the Stop and Shop had 1 million different products, including a bunch of earrings that were like mine. Now, they bought them for 19 cents also, and they sold them. They were selling them for 38 cents. Well, nobody bought them. I bought them for 19 cents, and I realized that was too cheap, that people didn't even believe you could get good, safe ear wires and things like that were gold or silver. So I made them $4.99. So I bought them for 19 cents, sold them for $4.99. I couldn't keep them. They sold so fast.
Wow.
Place next door for 38 cents sold none.
And it's the same product,
And
essentially.
the lesson was that you set your price not based on your cost, which many entrepreneurs do as a mistake, but you set it based on the market. What's the optimum price for the market? Now, if I took those same earrings and made them $9.99, I might not have sold any. But finding that magic point at $4.99, and we sold them, and you can math out what the margins are when you pay 19 cents.
So let me ask you, did you do any tests, or did you just kind of have this feeling?
The test is you put it out for $4.99. If they don't buy it, you lower the price.
And how do you market the store? Do people just foot traffic?
Well, that came about. I was very lucky. First of all, it started right away. People would walk by because they lived on the periphery of the campus, and people would start to see it. But there was a kid who lived in the neighborhood who was a poor kid who wanted to be a writer, and he wanted to go to Northwestern Journalism School, which at the time was the top journalism school in the country. And he was a senior at Purcell High School, and I was 19 years old. And I was almost going to become 20, and that becomes important in a second. And so he came in one day, and he says he's trying to. The Cincinnati Enquirer had a Sunday edition called Teen News, and it was a big magazine in the middle of all teenage stuff.
Okay.
And he said they would entertain an article if he'd write an article for the Teen News. And he asked if he could write an article on me in this store. I was 19. I was a teen. And so I said, sure. Anyway, I didn't think much
So you
of
got
it.
free press. Yeah.
I didn't think much of it. But the Sunday comes out. There's the cover of Teen Magazine with me on it, Cincinnati's Teen of the Week.
Teen of the week.
Voted by no one. But when you asked how people found out about it, and it told all about the store, well, the store just immediately took off. People were coming in from.
Wow.
And it took. Is this true? It took you 7 years to complete college.
I went to 3 different schools in 7 years, but part of it was because of the Vietnam War.
Okay.
When I was a senior at Cincinnati, and if I graduated, I would have gone to Vietnam, and I could get a deferral by joining either the Peace Corps or VISTA, which was Volunteers in Service to America. It was the Peace Corps in the U.S., effectively. So I ended up dropping out of Cincinnati my senior year with maybe a quarter or 2 to go, I don't remember, and joining VISTA and getting sent to Boston and working in a poverty neighborhood.
Okay.
What's this? I'm trying to remember. What's the famous composer? Famous black composer. He died maybe a year ago. He was at his 90 with a Q.
Quincy Jones.
Quincy Jones. So Quincy Jones's mother was my
job.
client.
Oh, wow.
He was just getting started, and she was poor and left the neighborhood. I just bring it up because I just remember when I was in Boston, Quincy Jones's mother. I'd go see her.
Wow.
But I ended up in Boston, and I did that for a year and a half, and I kept getting called in for military physicals and failing for one worked up reason or another. And I finished and decided to go back to BU. I think that finally I ended up getting in the lottery. I was number 19, and I got a final thing. I went to a psychiatrist, and he wrote a letter saying I was a compulsive poker player. you think that would have got me in the military, not
Right.
out.
Yeah,
But,
it would fit right in.
What was the first business that you started after?
Oh, well, wait, just to bring it back on the earrings, did you wind up selling the store or?
So I sold the store. I've sold I sold the store when I was in Boston. While I was actually, it was when I finished Vista and went to BU. I opened up an antique clothing store in Harvard Square.
The vintage, yeah.
And that was so much fun because we were kind of hippies, and there was another thing where I buy these clothes. I go all over New England to flea markets. All kinds of ways, and you find these things for 50 cents, and they sell for $60.
Wow.
So, I had a girlfriend at the time. She's another interesting story because I got fixed up with her. She came from Hong Kong, and we lived together for 2 years, and then she broke up with me for a Harvard law student. And the only reason it's an interesting story is that 46 years later.
No.
We reconnected, and now we've been together 10 years.
That's
Are
amazing.
you?
But we used to be in our store, in our antique
amazing.
clothing
Wow.
store. And
That's
I was
amazing.
with her last night too.
she was at
amazing.
the New Year's party
That's
last night, too.
amazing. Wow.
But so I had that store, and I sold that store.
that store.
And at the time, I got into kind of spiritual philosophy.
Okay.
And I wanted to move to Warwick, New York, where they had a headquarters for the teachings of George or Giovanovich Gurdjieff.
That's upstate.
That was in Warwick, New York, which is on the way toward
Buffalo?
no, much closer.
But Berkshire is it? No.
Middletown. I don't know if you know where Middletown is. Newburgh.
Oh, it's up in like the Hudson
Yeah, up
Valley
that way,
area.
about an hour and 20
by
minutes
the
from the
Catskills,
city.
sort of by Woodstock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I moved down there, and I sold the store. And fortunately, now when I sold the store, I always sold it for what was wealthy for my age and time, but it wasn't like for some giant multiples.
Right.
It was just, but it just was continued. It was a success, and then I sold it.
Yeah.
And while I was there was no way to make a living there except either the trades or the arts. And so I got involved with the trades, and I probably spent 7 years there. And during the 7 years, I think I started off being a record player and tape recorder repairman. and I worked in a shop.
Okay.
I was pretty good at fixing mechanical things. It was kind of pre-electronic, so most of the time it was a bad belt and all kinds of things like this. And then I became a landscaper. I became
I think a carpenter,
at
right?
laying sod. I became a master carpenter.
A plumber?
I framed houses and did finish work, built desks and things. And then eventually the group that I was involved with needed a plumber, so I volunteered to do that because I knew nothing about it. I grew up, when things broke, we called somebody. We did not grow up thinking we could do things. That's for somebody else who knows how to do things. And I learned how simple things were. As I said, pre-electronics, most things were mechanical, and basically this turns that. And so I agreed to become a plumber, and I caught on pretty quickly.
Okay.
And I don't know how long I had it, maybe 3 years or something. I became an oil burner repairman and a specialist in pumps and a lot of I didn't do sewers. When I needed sewer work, I called Roto-Rooter, but I really learned how things worked.
But the reason you're here is because you're studying spiritual philosophy.
I moved to this area because I always sensed that there was more to life than meets the eye.
Wow.
And back then, you had to filter a lot of the romanticism of spiritual philosophy out. You had to filter out what was essentially potentially valuable. And back then, as I said, we were young and dreamers, and so it was a wonderful experience. But
What brought this into your awareness? Was it the hippies or what?
Probably, I don't know, we're
Was it
on
the
the air
acid?
here, but probably I didn't do a lot, but I did a fair amount of hallucinogens, acid and
That was
different
popular
things.
during that time.
LSD.
And I think that was a door opener for Ram Dass and Timothy Leary and many different people.
Steve Jobs.
And Steve Jobs,
Steve Jobs,
and where you'd experience and see things that were beyond anything we were taught as a potential. And that has really affected me my whole life. I was really I left there eventually because I was 28, I got married.
Oh, you got married? Okay.
I've done that a few times. But I moved back to Cincinnati, and I think initially I got into a friend of mine who was developing a lot of real estate, and I got into that with them for a little bit. And while I was a plumber, I found a shower head. When I was a plumber, there was a shower head that gave you this great pressure, but it only used 2 gallons a minute rather than 5 or 6 gallons a minute of a normal head. And when I moved back there, the energy crisis hit, where you couldn't get fuel, the price of gas and oil went sky high, and people were burning all their trees on wood stoves and buying kerosene.
This is the early
heaters.
70s, yeah.
And
I've heard about the energy crisis.
And we'd wait in line to get gas. You'd be in line for 2 hours.
Wow.
Then you get there and they'd be out of gas. And so I got the idea of starting an energy-saving products business starting with the shower head. And the shower head was owned and started, it was originally invented for the nuclear submarine program. So they'd have a great shower with using much less water. And it was owned by these 2 drunks up in Newport, Rhode Island.
Okay.
And I went up there with one of my close friends, and we made a deal with these guys to get this shower head. So we started
to acquire the rights?
to acquire the rights to it.
Okay.
And then we did that, and there's a lot of inner stories with it, but I can't go into them all. But and my market was universities, hotels, and more commercially oriented, because you could put these things in and save a lot of money. The biggest savings was hot water, not necessarily just water.
Right.
And then I said, well, why don't we look at taking this to retail? And back then, the retail was not Walmart or Kmart. It was Grossman's Lumber and True Value Hardware, Ace Hardware, this and that. And we started so we got the idea to do that, and we'd package it. And there were all the companies that were in this type of business were new,
Right.
so nobody had a lot of experience doing it. So our package, which was probably fair at best, was great compared to the market.
Right,
And
right.
and then I remember one day, and this was where I became an inventor, I guess. I was at home at night, and I was saying, "Boy, you know, this product's selling. We got to do more energy products." And so I spent the entire night trying to think of every way that a house loses energy and come up with ideas. And I fortunately came up with a whole bunch: a hot water heater installation jacket, a special thing that saved water in toilets, a fan that would hang in a doorway that would move these kerosene heats that was making one room 100 degrees while the rest of the house was freezing. It would bring the air from one room to the other, and we made these products, and that company, built about $6 million in a few years. And $6 million then was a lot of money. And
A lot,
again,
yeah.
within the context of my life.
So
it
like a
was,
gross revenue, $6
we
million.
were doing $6 million, and maybe we were making $1 million or $1.5 million profit. And I really lost track of my age during each one of these.
Yeah.
Just for the reference, I'm 79 right now, so you can math it out.
Yeah.
But
So it's about 40 years ago, more or less.
yes, yeah.
the
It was
set-
probably then I was in my maybe 35.
35.
Okay.
Okay.
Like that.
So you became a multimillionaire.
No, I didn't. I mean, I had partners that invested in it and
Gotcha.
stuff, but I was making a
Well, you're
living.
making a
I
good
bought
living.
home.
Yeah.
I became an adult. I became financially.
I love that.
And then,
Yeah.
and
I
then,
love
you
that.
wind up exiting, selling the company.
So then what happened is I recognized that this was before Walmart, Kmart, any of these guys had computers. So no one ever knew what their inventory was. So the only way you knew if something was really selling was by rumor. The buyers would hear from another store and this and that, this thing's flying. But I would go to the stores all the time, and I noticed that two things were happening. One, the price of energy was dropping, and the sale of these products were slowing down.
Okay.
Even though the buyer didn't know it or whatever. And I went back to my partners and I said that I'm concerned about this. And I had already come up with another idea that I had to present to them. And at the time I had my oldest son, who's now 49, was 6 months old. So it's kind of gets you some numbers to math out when we were. And he would crawl around the kitchen and he'd bang his head against the kitchen cabinet or this and that. And I said, boy, if I could make a playpen type of product with netting and steel tubing that you could bend into any H-sided shape and just stick it in the kitchen, and he could crawl on the floor around it and not hit anything, and it'd be safe. And it could fold up and weigh nothing, 6 pounds, like a little suitcase you could carry anywhere. And I thought, boy, that'd be a great idea. And I think what put the pin on is I was at a show, I think the hardware show for the other energy, and I came up with the name Crawl Space. And I said, and when I came with that name, I called immediately my patent attorney. I got that filed, and I decided we're going into business because that was like the magic.
So you transition. So you own this energy saving business, and then you say, "I see the writing on the wall.
Right.
Cost of energy is going down. This isn't sustainable.
right, so
We're
not that.
transitioning to the baby safety business or the baby playpen."
I was always looking for opportunity. I guess if anything, if I have anything that I could say was a skill, a really a valuable skill, was recognizing opportunity.
Yeah.
And I saw that the energy business was going to go down as the prices, because we all were told and thought that we were running out of oil in the whole world. The energy was going to be forever
Right.
too expensive. And then we saw that turned out that we were not running out of oil, and whether it was a fake or not, I don't know. But I saw that the price of oil was coming down, and this means this whole energy-saving products business was going to eventually go away. So when I thought of this baby product, I went to my two partners, and I told them about it. One of them said, whatever you think is a good idea, we should do. And the other one says, we invested our money in energy, and we should stay in it, and this and that. And I blew up. And I said, Fred, that was his name. He's still one of my closest friends.
Okay.
But I said, we can't. We have to do this. The other one's going down, and we have to do it. I don't care what you. and I just forced I just said that's what we're doing. And
Did you have majority voter rights or shares or?
I don't remember. I was the entrepreneur, so I had all the leverage.
That's
It
right.
Wasn't
That's
anyone
right.
else. But
How were you so like the certainty, the belief system in this product? Where does that come from?
well, it was at a time also. I don't know if you guys are too young, but they used to have wooden scissors gates. They would expand wooden gates that were crisscross, and they were very big for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they even made corrals of them that would be circular. And they had a bunch of deaths,
Yeah.
a bunch of babies that died, got their heads caught in between this, and they were dying. So they were being outlawed. So at the time that I came up with it, I also knew about that. And I said, what an opportunity this is. If we can make this, it provides this whole replacement for this. And there was another thing with it, and that is at that time, the juvenile products business didn't package things. They'd sell, cribs and gates and all these things in brown corrugated packaging, and that said playpen, things like that. And I said, why don't we? This thing involved a box that was about a 2-foot square or something like that, a little bigger maybe. And I said, why don't we put a big label on it, a big color? Let's take a photograph and put a big label on it. And so we did that, and it really started that in the industry, where then other companies started taking their packaging and doing it. But so what happened is that product immediately became a big hit, instantly a big hit. And then I got another idea from another baby, or maybe it was the same baby, where when I put him on the floor in an infant seat. By the way, if I'm taking too long, I don't know how long this interview is.
Oh, no,
so-
keep going. This is great information.
I just have.
There's no time.
There's
Yeah,
no time.
there's no
But I'm about to
time.
ask you questions about your
Well,
children.
I will tell you
This is
something.
interesting.
I'm described as a serial entrepreneur. Okay, but I didn't know I was a serial entrepreneur.
I didn't know you were in the
until-
cereal business.
Well, I have another friend who really was a serial entrepreneur who developed granola. Okay, that's true. But I didn't know it until I was much older. In fact, the term didn't even exist. Somebody said, you're a serial entrepreneur.
Right, yeah.
So in the process, I did so many different businesses and had so many different exciting opportunities and adventures that until I started doing a couple of these podcasts lately, I didn't realize that there are so many good stories and maybe even useful ones for potential or wannabe entrepreneurs. So as I go into it, as you talk about it, I bring up stories that I don't mean to, which can create a longer interview than initially planned.
No, I mean I think it's very useful because
I want to ask about that. When you sold this is what you had a partner.
I always had investors.
Oh, okay.
But my investors were always friendly. I never used venture capital. It was always family, friends, or related.
right.
Why'd you do that? Why'd you
well,
go that way?
when I get asked the question at the business schools about investors, I said, first of all, you should always look for friendly investors first, if you believe in what you're doing, because they're not going to be saying, I got to be on the board and I need to fire you and I need all these things. They're just supporting you, and they're 50% of their interest is rooting for you as opposed to making money. Now, many people don't have the opportunity for friendly investors. But if you do have the opportunity, I always recommend it because you can run your own company. So everything I did, the friendly investors always agreed, okay, you do everything, you decide everything. You want to sell the company, it's your decision.
Right.
I would never make things where people would be voting on my decisions.
What do you like? I think it's a double-edged sword with friendly investors because you can ruin a friendship if you lose their money at the same time.
They weren't friendly enough.
That's a good answer.
Right.
That's a good answer. So you were married, and how many?
So
children?
I was married. Then. I was married for 13 years.
13.
My wife was Irene, and we had 3 kids who were my 3 natural-born kids.
Okay.
And I have a lot of stepkids too now, but we had a terrible marriage. I just didn't have a good marriage. In fact, I remember going on vacation to Hawaii by myself because she didn't want to go. Okay. And so after 13 years, we got divorced. But after 14 years, one more year, we became the closest of friends the rest of our lives. She passed away 5 years ago, but she became truly she was one of the most wonderful human beings, and just not a good wife for me. And she got married again, and her husband became one of my close friends also. So
Wow. Did you work crazy hours as an entrepreneur?
you always do. You never not work. You're 24 hours, 7 days a week. It doesn't mean that every second you're going through a file.
Yeah.
It's just that your mind is always connected. And when I do speak at business schools, and they talk about, because there's a lot of people there that are thinking of becoming an entrepreneur
Right.
or quitting their job, even though they have a mortgage and a home. And I said, it's very important to get your partner as a partner in this, as far as understanding
As in
what's
your
involved.
wife, your romantic partner.
Yeah, your romantic
Yeah.
partner, what's involved, because this really, to be successful as an entrepreneur, you have to take advantage of the power you have. And the power is that you can work all the time. You can focus on it 100% of the time. If you work for a corporation, you generally are working 9 to 5, and you go home at night and it's not your problem. But as an entrepreneur, to be successful, you end up with that type of effort. And I'm sure there's been a lot of marriages that have broken up because of it.
Right.
And it's very important, if you're going to start a company, that your spouse or partner understand what you're going into to some degree,
Right.
and supports it.
So do you think that's kind of what led the marriage? Or why the marriage?
Well, we were just very different
Oh, and
personalities
you're-
that way. As I said,
Yeah.
she was one of the most wonderful human beings I've known in my life, but I didn't recognize that while I was married to her.
Right.
But
And you married 2 more times? I think you said
I married one more time.
one more time.
And she, my wife Bonnie, she lives here, and I'm very good friends with her and her fiance. But she was very supportive as a wife. She was into it, and we traveled back and forth. We spent 2.5 a year in Hong Kong, and with factories and with inventors and the likes. So she was a very good wife for an entrepreneur, because she was into it. She even ran our gift division for a while, and her 2 kids worked for the company.
Okay.
One, and I'm very close to both of them, but one, Jay, do you know Jay? You might know him, but he became a very successful entrepreneur on his own.
This is your stepson, Jay.
Yeah, stepson
Yeah.
Jay, but I'm very close to them and their kids, and they're now entrepreneurs, and I work with them and
With their kids.
yeah, with their kids. One of
That's
them,
amazing. That's
one of them's
pretty
an
cool.
entrepreneur in the software, and I'm really close with him. And one granddaughter is remarkable. She, out of 3,000 people, 3,000 women that applied, became, Anne Hathaway and Devil Wears Prada?
Yeah.
She got Anne Hathaway's job for Anna
Wintour.
Wintour.
Anna Wintour.
Yeah.
Wow. So
Anna
she works
Wintour.
for Vogue.
And she
or
started off
Condé
as
Nast.
one of
Yeah.
Vogue, right?
two assistants. And then
Wow.
the other assistant left, she became her number 1 assistant. And she did that for 2 years. She's not only physically beautiful, she's smart, and she's one of the kindest people I know. And after 2 years, she decided that that's enough, that she wanted to move on, and she told Anna, and Anna wouldn't let her quit and made her chief of staff. And she's 26 years old,
26.
and she'll probably be running Vogue.
Wow.
pretty
You
amazing.
can give her my number after that.
And you have children.
She's got a very serious boyfriend.
And what do your children do for work?
My kids, they all have different things. My youngest one, he's interesting, Jesse. Jesse was naturally the worst businessman I could imagine. He had, as far as his natural ability as a businessman. But after going to school and he went to broadcasting school, and he ended up becoming New York City's one of New York City's traffic announcers.
Like an on-air.
Who'll tell you, on air.
okay.
He said he could make it up. He said he could have the whole
Looking at
city
the FDR
running into
and
each
there's-
other. if he
Okay,
wanted to.
okay.
But he could never get anywhere, because to get on TV, he was on radio, to get on TV, you had to be an attractive woman. They wouldn't
Right.
have let
You
a
could transition,
guy do
yeah.
it. So, and then for a while, he was an agent for comedy.
Okay.
Who did the Affleck? who's the Affleck voice? The
Oh,
famous-
Affleck.
yeah, what's his name? He died.
I know the
But
voice. I never
he
knew
was
who did.
a
Yeah.
representative.
Who did it?
him as assistant? But finally, he started a business. He wanted to make a caffeinated bar that you'd eat, and it would give you. If in the afternoon you're sitting around tired at the office, you eat one of these, and it's like 3 cups of coffee, and which I didn't think was particularly a great idea, but whatever. And he did this for 6 or 7 years. There was always a little aftertaste problem with it, and. He didn't,
Did you invest in it?
What's that?
Did you invest in
I
it?
didn't need to. He really had no overhead. So he did the new business. In today's world, you can start a business creating a product, going on Amazon, and if somehow you can get people to start buying it, you can work from your house, you can get a factory to make it.
Right.
And that's what he did. So for about 6 or 7 years, he lost money. Fortunately, because I helped him out financially, not in his business, but financially, he was able to continue. Most entrepreneurs don't have that opportunity, or that option
That's
to
so
take
true.
7 years of losing money
That's true.
and stay in business.
Yes.
But he did, and after 7 years, he got rid of this taste issue, and suddenly his product started selling, and suddenly he got to break even, and then he went beyond break even. Now he's making a real living. And then he was called Jesse's Wake Up Bars. Then he came up with Jesse's Goodnight Bars that are bars you have, and they have all these goodnight, all natural stuff.
Wow.
And then he
Melatonin
has a thing that you can take when you're feeling anxious called Jesse's Chill Out. And
He's got to get in the weed bar business.
Wow.
and then he's suddenly becoming a good businessman. He used to always ask me questions, but never did anything I recommended. Now we work together. He's married, and his wife has an MBA. She's from the Ukraine, and she's very smart too. And they're continuing to grow. And
Where does he live?
he moved from New York down here. He lives around the corner from me.
Okay.
Right now, and they're moved to Florida because in today's world, you can do what he's doing. You can live where you want to live.
Right.
He's got a factory. He's got one in Pittsburgh and one in Tennessee that makes his products, and it's an option I didn't have. In fact, I wouldn't even be good at it. And I'm pretty reasonably skilled in the things I did in life. I was skilled in getting a product at Walmart, trying to get on end caps, all the different things. But the skill of digital marketing is a different skill that I wouldn't know how to do.
But do you think you would find a way? As you
if
say,
I had to, I probably would.
You would
Yeah.
find a way for sure.
If I had to, I probably would. But
And your other sibling, other children?
and then my oldest son had a business
get
in
into
window
the meat of,
treatment. He had a business in window treatment with his father-in-law that they did for a bunch of years. And I think in COVID they went down and they sold the company. But he has done something interesting himself, and that is that for years early on he started buying cartoon cells. Do you know what a cartoon cell is?
I do not.
It's when they originally did all the Snow Whites and Mickey Mouse. All these were all done by hand. These drawings that were done, and now it's all done digitally. And so he started buying these original cartoon cells that they don't make anymore, and they become this huge collector's item. And he's got over 1,000 of them, and some are worth a whole lot of money. He's built this small fortune
Oh, really?
with his cartoon cells that. He keeps getting bigger and bigger offers. In many cases, he won't take them because he knows they don't make anymore. That they only go up in value. So he's done well in that way, and not any way that either one of them would I have recommended going into these bars or cartoon cells. But
Entrepreneurship.
they found their own way.
That's amazing.
And my son Jordan, he had a business for a few years that was a terrific opportunity and using cameras is when the news companies were all having to get rid of their staff because they couldn't afford to have these photographers everywhere. And he was developing a system where you'd use your cell phones and the news companies would be able to tie into everyone's cell phone. But he was too early. And he and his partner, they were both very good businessmen, but they didn't have enough experience in coding and managing coders. And it just took too long. By the time they got it working, they were too late. And so he went and worked for Canon for 6 years, Canon copier. He became a star there, but it was difficult because it's a company that's about 80% Japanese, and it was very difficult for non-Japanese to move up in the company. So he has left there, and now he's developing his own, some very interesting things that he's coding himself. And I can't tell you what he's doing, but I'm a believer in it if he really can do what he's trying to do. Wow. So they're all kind of involved that way. And as I say, my stepson Jay he developed a face mask for anti-aging and acne that would sell for $30, and it worked for 30 days. Every day you put this on, it had these lights.
That's interesting.
And he sold it, I believe, for over $100 million to Unilever.
Wow.
I mean, and he's a terrific businessman. He really became talented. They're all doing well. And his sister, Jill, in her 50s, went back to school and has become a counselor for difficult kids and just loves it. And to me, that's just as big a success as a financial success, to find things that are meaningful in your life.
Right. I want to bring it back to your career, because we haven't really even touched upon, what, if you Google John Osher, what you're really known for. Yeah.
SpinBrush, yeah.
Yeah. So, because I think it's incredibly ironic what you did, starting, just to say it, you started a spin lollipop, and then you wind up selling it to a toothpaste company.
Well, a lot of people joke about that, because when we had the toy business, one of the things that I needed, I did that for about 9 years, and I realized, since I always looked at every business as a project, not something I'm going to do forever and then pass on to the kids for generations.
Right.
Everything was a project that I would sell the company eventually, because in most cases that's where the biggest money came from, selling companies. And I was in the toy business, and that had many different great stories, including my greatest failure, where I learned the most. If you want to,
yeah, I'd love to hear it. Love to hear that.
So, when I developed those baby products, where I did as I said, my second son would be on the floor in an infant seat, and he'd get bored. 0 to 6 months, they'd cry in 5 minutes. And I give him a rattle, and they drop it. And I said, well, why don't we make a little, like a swing set thing, and hang the toys down to him so he can play with it, have visual stimulation, and when he drops it, it's still there. And so we made a thing that we called Rainbow Toy Bars. This was when I had still had the energy business tied in with, crawl space. And to that day, the two products that have had the most effect worldwide were that product, the Toy Bars and the toothbrush, because the Toy Bars now is effectively used by every baby in the world, different forms of it. So I ended up selling that company to Gerber. Gerber bought it for my infant products. They were buying infant companies at the time. They said, boy, we have the Gerber name.
And they bought it along with the energy products.
Yeah, but they bought the energy products to basically sell off. They didn't care about that.
Yeah.
But
did they factor that
bought
into the
Century
EBITDA?
Products and Built Right and these crib companies. They thought, well, with a Gerber name, we can use that for everything. Yep. So they bought my company for my crawl space and my toy bars. Mm-hmm. Well, the toy bars had a great patent, but it got knocked off by Ilco with Sesame Street, and then Fisher Price and all that. And Gerber didn't do anything about it. They didn't fight it. But as I said, now every infant in the world has some form of this.
And did you retain any equity, or you?
No, I did.
So you got your exit. Yeah,
he sold it.
But I worked for them for a year. They bought my company. They sold off the energy, and I worked for them for a year. And I wasn't going anywhere with it. I was kind of blocked by a brother-in-law of the original owners. With everything I tried to do, he would squash. And but I did develop some.
You felt like he was jealous that you.
Yeah, he was jealous. But the good thing is that I got the opportunity during that year to go to Asia, to go to Hong Kong and to China and to Taiwan. Back then, they were making goods in Taiwan and Korea. And to meet people there. So that was not part of my skill set or experience until that year. And that I made a relationship with a guy in Hong Kong who to this day is one of my closest friends, and
Someone
also
we both
became
know? Is it Charles or no?
extraordinarily wealthy, making.
Is it
variety.
Charles Zip or no?
No, this is William Babs. He's a very, very wonderful friend. But I'm trying to remember what point I was making. So I got into the toy business, and what happened though, after a year in the baby product, I figured this isn't going anywhere. Now I was making $130,000 salary in the mid '80s. When that was a big salary,
That's a lot of money.
Right.
and yet I decided I'm not doing anything. And who are you going to get rid of when things get tough? Is me. And things weren't doing well. They weren't. They were not doing well. And Gerber decided to dump the entire industry, because they started getting all these lawsuits. Because every time somebody got in a car crash with a baby, whoever owned the car seat, which was Century Products, was owned by Gerber, they get sued no matter what.
Yeah.
And so they eventually sold the whole thing. But I made it. I thought, well, I was inventing products for energy and then for baby. I said, but the problem is they're limited to ideas, to needs. For energy, I had to think of the house, everything. And with baby products, you had to carry them, feed them, sleep them, whatever it was. And I love this idea of toys because there was no need. There was an infinite supply of ideas you could bring to if it was fun. You could do toys. And I had grown up working at Kenner Products,
Right.
So I decided to start a toy company. And I think as part of my investors, I got my closest friend who owned Kenner, father owned Kenner growing up and this and that. And I did 2 products. They were developed by a guy who you may or may not know, but I asked you yesterday, but your dad knows, named Howard Wexler. Okay. And Howard was a guy in New York City. He was a child psychologist who
He invented Connect 4.
who invented Connect 4. Now, when he told his mother that he invented a product, she said, "What could you invent, Howard, that nobody doesn't already have?" But he has done very well, and if he hears this interview, I'd love to see him. I think he's around New York still. But
Come on the show, Howard.
But those 2 products, what happened, and at that point in life, I had never failed. I had all these little businesses, and I had always success. Well, for whatever reason, I had gotten orders from Toys R Us for both products. We did a blooming doll, which was a little doll that opened into a flower. It was a flower pot that opened to a puppet and then a doll, and then a thing called Crunch Balls, which was half between a balloon and a foam ball. They were both good products. But Toys R Us, I had got all the inventory, and Toys R Us gave me an order, and they canceled the order, and basically were putting me out of business. And so I had investors in the company, and I had, and everyone said, well, this is it. This guy's obviously a 1-hit or a 2-hit wonder. And I was getting divorced at the time.
Wow.
And I had moved to Cleveland as part of my selling the company to Gerber. I had to move to Cleveland. So I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any support system. And I was going out of business. Everything was going bad.
Yeah.
And all I wanted to do was hide under the bed. I mean, and I bring this up because it's called entrepreneurial terror. And it's something that many, many successful entrepreneurs have experienced in their life. And it's part of when you make this decision to become an entrepreneur, that you get to a point where things aren't working out and there's nobody to solve it other than yourself.
And you had 3 kids.
And I had 3 kids, and I remember for 3 days I literally laid in bed. I didn't know what to do, and then I decided to get up. I decided, first of all, I decided I needed help. I got a psychiatrist. The only time in my life I had a therapist for about 3 months, because I felt like I needed some kind of support system, somebody to talk to. And I made a decision, so I said, get up. I remember just getting up. I had to find a way. And I wrote down in order the things I had to do. Now, you had to realize I lost my investors, I lost my bank, I lost my retailers. I basically...
Getting a divorce?
Getting a divorce and everything. So I had to put down... the first thing I had to do was to go back to Toys R Us and see if I could work something out with them to get them to take this inventory that they had originally ordered. And I did that. And I went back with my salesman, Herb Feldman. I don't know if you ever knew Herb. He's a friend of Bob's. He passed away, but and we went to above the buyer's head. The buyer who canceled us because Toys R Us had too many. They had to cut back their inventory that year, and they cut. So I met with his boss, a guy named Van Butler. I bring it up because many years afterwards I'd see him, and I'll never forget his name. And I told him the story, and I said, they're being bankrupt, put out of business because you guys ordered. And he said, we need new toy companies far more than we need you going out of business. And we made a deal for him to take the inventory at a discount, but it didn't matter. He took the inventory.
Wow.
And then I had already developed the product for next year, which I'll tell you about in a minute. It was a good product. And I went back to my investors and I told them I got rid of the inventory. I said that I have this new product for next year, which they didn't want to hear about. They'd already heard about last year's product. And I said, this is going to be really good. And we restructured our investment. I had to put more money in. I had to get diluted, but we stayed in business. And then I had to get a bank because my bank had quit too. And one of the investors who became my mentor really for some years, he had a bank. He was a successful entrepreneur himself. And he had a bank, and we went to them, and they agreed to be my bank. And what did I learn? First of all, I learned humility. I learned that no matter, because I was kind of a cocky guy going into that, and I learned that no matter how smart you do things, how things worked out, I can't buy the product myself, and there's a certain level of luck that you have to have in your favor. And from that point, the rest of my life, I never was cocky. I wasn't in the dumps and looking at everything negatively, but it got rid of that because that's kind of a dangerous trait to have that cockiness. I guess the other thing I learned was to find a way, that somehow you just have to find a way. If you're going to do this, you got to do that. And
that's amazing that the toys, the Van, what's his name, Van Butler?
Yeah.
That he said, okay, we canceled our order of this inventory, but we don't want you to go out of business. You
Right.
seem like a good guy.
He didn't know about the canceling, by the way. I'll keep hitting the mic. I hope that's right. He didn't know about it. It was a guy who worked for him.
Just make sure that it's green. The button's green.
Where's it? Yeah, it's great.
Okay, perfect. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, it's okay. We'll do the interview over.
I just don't know if you did it. Yeah.
So he believed in you.
And I don't think he knew me to believe in me. He didn't believe Toys R Us was at the top of their game then. They had gone through years of success.
Yeah.
They didn't know from otherwise.
Okay.
And he just happened to be a nice man.
Wow.
And I was lucky. The buyer was not. The buyer couldn't care less.
Yeah.
And so he went over, and the buyer worked for him, and he went over his head, and he made this deal. And then we had already developed a product. I had developed a product for next year because you have to develop it way in advance. And it was during the time when people were paying 50 cents at Papa Shot, it was called, where you'd see how many baskets you could make, and they were at carnivals and bars. And they were all over. And
We
you'd
played
see-
a few of those
and
games.
They would be. They'd
popular today.
have a score, and you'd see how many you could make. And I made a home version of it that had a net that hung onto the back of a door, a closet door.
Oh, yeah,
It had a rim with a net, and then we had a net that came back and it hooked up to the back of a chair, and it had little electronics. And it was the game. It was called arcade basketball.
Wow.
And I think back then it was 1995,
Yeah. Okay.
in a big box like our baby product box.
Yeah.
And so our second year we did $6 million and made $1.5 million profit, and we were in business.
Wow.
And so there was just so many things to learn. And from that point on, we went on to be $140 million in 8 years.
Wow.
And
Selling all
had-
similar types of
well,
arcade, home arcade.
Well,
or-
we had our biggest product up until the SpinBrush. Well, maybe it was our biggest ever. Was Stretch Armstrong.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
You know,
Yes.
you guys
I
are
used to
the
have
age you
that.
could
Yeah,
have- right,
absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
And
That's
we
crazy.
were very profitable, and we made a semi-deal with Russ Berry, who was a gift company, and became part of him, and including Koosh Balls became part of the company and everything.
Yeah.
And eventually sold the company to Hasbro.
Okay.
And it got semi-diluted through the Raspberry and this and that, but I made enough that at 50, I retired, moved to Florida,
Okay.
and took up golf.
Took up golf.
And
Is that where you met my dad in that throughout that
no,
process?
I knew your dad through the whole toy industry.
Okay.
Tom, and your whole family.
No, but when you were building this company is when you met him.
Yeah. I didn't know him before the toy industry, but and I did that for a year and a half. And when I got bad at golf, which it was usually the trigger to do a lot of things I've done in life, I got bad at golf. I decided, well, I got together with some of the designers in Cleveland who had designed I had hired to design some toys that I did. Mm-hmm. And I said, why don't we come up with something? And I said, I have a list of 100 ideas. And so we all sat down in Cleveland. Wow. They're a company called Nottingham Spur.
Wait. Before, how long a period from when you sell to Hasbro to when?
Maybe a year and a half or something.
Okay.
So I worked for Hasbro as president in charge of nothing. So I went from vice president in charge of nothing at Gerber to president in charge of nothing at Hasbro.
and can I ask, just because I do I business broker. That's
right.
So how do you sell to Hasbro? Do you use an investment banker or?
That was done really mainly from Raspberry, and then I would do these road shows in front of. In presentations to groups
Where
at
you
Hasbro
you do like a sim
and to Alan Hassenfeld, and
wow.
so we kind of did that together. But it was initiated by Russ, and I think they sold the group for $150 million, the toy group, something like that. Which I did not have a huge part of that. I had enough to be wealthy within my context of my life,
right,
and to retire, But we sat down in Cleveland with this list of 100, and the very first one, in the toy business, after Stretch Armstrong, four mailmen, two couples, three of them delivered mail, and one ran a one-person post office in West Virginia. And they had invented a lollipop that lit up. Mm-hmm. And one guy who worked for me went to Pittsburgh and saw this at a convention or something, and he called me, and I said, God, that sounds so cool. Fly them in the next day. I had them all come in the next day, and I made a deal because what I saw was I was never going to sell this company. It was all based on me inventing or getting inventions every year. First of all, buying the entrepreneur, if he's the key person, never is worth much because give them a bunch of money and they're no longer interested.
Right, yeah.
And I said, boy, this idea of doing interactive candy, that would be a real category that Hasbro and Mattel, they don't have that. So I love this idea of starting with this it was like a lightsaber lollipop, and you press a button and it would light up. And the problem is we tried to make it for about a year, and we can make it, but as soon as you ship it, it'd get into humidity in a truck, and it would lose its magic, the light.
Oh.
But in the middle of doing that, and of course we had toys and stuff we were doing, but in the middle of doing that, they came back and they had this idea of this lollipop that would spin. It looked like a right angle drill. Came up into the side, you press a button and it would turn. Well, I always ate my lollipop by spinning it with my hand,
Yeah.
And so I said, now that's a big idea.
All right.
And I said, but we don't want this right angle. You want to come straight up. So we ended up doing that, and I got it with licenses. I ended up with a big thing with, I don't know if you know Dan Romanelli. Do you know?
No, very well.
Okay, so that's a whole nother wonderful story how I ended up with Dan.
Dan Romanelli is like the Warner.
He ran all the licensing for Warner Brothers. Which includes Bugs Bunny and all the Looney Tunes.
And Harry Potter.
Right. There was a great story with that, but again, this interview we don't have time for every story. But we ended up doing all these licenses where Bugs Bunny would eat a carrot while this was spinning, and lightsabers and this that, and it became in itself that became $60 million, and we sold millions in Japan, and different areas.
So you did it with a big Warner Brothers license.
Well, we had Warner Bros. But had other licenses, and we had non-licenses too. We made some kids versions. Oh no, they were all kids. I've got toothbrush.
Adult.
No, we did ones with licenses.
I don't know where my brain's going, but you could do an adult version of this.
I remember we made a doll and it came out ahead and did different things. But it was a huge success, and And this whole process, I forget the timing that Russ Berry got involved, and we sold to Hasbro. And they did a very poor job of the whole thing afterwards. But I worked for them for 6 months, and I had nothing going, and I ended up settling with them because we still had an earn-out settle. I had some kind of settlement with them.
Okay.
And left. But
And then
from that time, though, where we made millions of these lollipops for basically for 60 cents, we became experts in small batteries, motors, and gears in Asia, in China, where you could buy alkaline batteries for 48 cents a piece in volume. Well, I was paying 11 cents, and I was buying thousands a day, of these things. Same thing with the motors. The motors might cost 75 cents each, and I was paying 9 cents each in the volumes I was buying. So when I got together with my friends after my year-and-a-half retirement, my first idea was if we could make a battery-operated toothbrush that would sell at Walmart for under $5. Now, it's almost an impossible thing to ask, but we start with 60 cents, that these lollipops with the motor, battery, and gears, and we could go as high as $1.40 cost and be under $5. So I had made some very strict criteria of how it had to have a certain torque. It had to come with alkaline batteries, and they had to last for at least 3 months of use.
3 months.
Yeah, which was based on, I think, 2 minutes a day, twice a day.
4 minutes.
That they would last. Because if you had to buy new batteries, alkaline batteries, rather than 2 packs for $4 or $5, that wasn't a good deal.
Right.
So it took us a year, and then at the end of a year, we got it well past the threshold of a great product. It got much better over time than that, but it was and it was so much more perceived value than the best-selling toothbrush at the time was Cross Action by Oral-B, which was $3.95, and we would be $4.87 for this battery-powered product. And we decided to test it. So I sold it to Meijer stores. It's spelled M-E-I-J-E-R. Do you know Meijers? They're the only chain. They're probably $40 billion, $50 billion chain that's like Walmart, that survived Walmart.
Oh, wow.
John, are they out in Minneapolis? I
think Minneapolis.
I've been. That's where I've seen it in Minneapolis.
Yeah, and what made them succeed is that they were the first ones to combine grocery and mass merchant. And they became experts in grocery. So even the years that Walmart tried to get into grocery, they were terrible at it for a long time. So Meijer still has their own territories, family-owned business. And we tested 24 packs where we take the toothbrushes. We did the same trick we did with a SpinBrush, and that is the SpinBrush, you could press the button on the shelf and watch Bugs Bunny eat a carrot and have this thing spin. Well, we made it when you press the button of the toothbrush, it sounded like a little VW engine. It didn't, because we didn't want people to think it was a toy for that money. You could really feel the power of it. And we found, so we went to all the stores. There were 5 of us working for the company, or 6, and they didn't have any in Cleveland where we lived. So we went to Toledo, Detroit, Columbus, and we all stayed for 3 or 4 days and found the stores that actually put it out, because they didn't have to, so we had to find them. Some cases we had to bring them from the back to put them out. And the best-selling toothbrush at the time was Oral-B's Cross Action, was selling 2 per week per store, and they had 6 different SKUs, so they were selling effectively 12 of their toothbrushes, the best in the country, a week. We were selling 7 a day.
Wow.
And at that point, even though I didn't know the oral care industry or the health and beauty industry, so we didn't even have appointments a lot of places that we had to find a way to get appointments. But I knew what we had, and I called Hong Kong to this friend who I met years earlier.
Right.
Became my factory, and quadrupled the tooling before we had an order, so that we would be ready, that we could do it, because I believed these numbers were really indicative of what the truth was. And within 6 months, in 6 months, we had budgeted to do $6 million with $1.5 million profit, and we did $44 million with a $22 million profit.
Wow.
With this company. It was by far, everywhere we shipped it was by far the biggest selling toothbrush. And but how did we end up selling these things? Because
And this is a 5-person company.
well, at that point we might have had 10.
Yeah.
I forget we had in the end 9 or 10.
Yeah.
But it was being sold initially by myself and my partner Larry Blaustein, who was also extraordinarily talented, who ended up he used to be in product design, but he ended up being in charge of production in China.
And did you have like a finance guy, like a CFO?
Yeah, I had a guy for finance, and I had people that I'd filtered through everything I've done. So they were all really talented.
Okay.
Really talented group. And what was the point? Part of the problem with being older is you forget the point. But what happened? So how do we sell it? So Larry and I were selling it. Now, I'm a reasonable salesman, but I don't know the industry. I don't know the discounts. I don't know the language and everything. But we sold enough just to see how it worked. And when I knew it was selling, I knew I had to get a real star, someone to be in charge of sales, the vice president of sales. Now, most of the salespeople I knew, I knew some guys in the toy industry. Like I had Tony Martinson, was very good in the toy industry, but most of the people I knew were journeymen. They'd work for companies and they'd switch companies and they'd be in charge of a territory. And there was nothing. I needed a star. I needed somebody who was an entrepreneur personality, who was a maverick.
Yeah.
And so once I'd made this decision, when I saw the test sales, because before that I didn't want to be flying somebody to Cleveland and moving them and then finding out that I moved their family and it failed or something. Yeah. But once I knew, I had met a guy at a show in Seattle at a health and beauty show we went to or something, who was his job was a headhunter in health and beauty. So he's the only guy I knew. I had his card, and I called him and I said, "You don't remember me? I talked to you a month ago." And I told him, I said that I've got this company. I said it's brand new, and I said, but just so you know, I'm not new. I've already been in this business and that, and I've sold it. So I'm not a rookie, just so you know. But I'm looking for a guy in this oral care business who's a star, a sales guy who's not a regional journeyman, who's an entrepreneur, a maverick, all this stuff. And he said to me, he says, it'll take me a month before I can even probably find one person for you to interview for your description. And I said, okay, I didn't know what else to do. So I hung up. I was driving from Cincinnati to New York, from Cleveland to Cincinnati to see my parents. And an hour later, he calls me back, and he says, you won't believe this, but I got the perfect guy for you. And he happens to be flying into Cincinnati right now, as his plane he was going to Indianapolis was diverted to Cincinnati, where you're headed, and because of weather or something. And I said, well, can you arrange for him to, I gave him the address to come to my house and meet me. He was a guy who was the head of sales for Clorox at Walmart. He was in charge of $900 million of sales. He got fired. But this guy says he's really good. He's a maverick. No one knows why he got fired. Anyway, he came to the house, and here he comes in. My dad had early onset Alzheimer's, opens the door. And I immediately grabbed him and gave him a toothbrush, told him to go brush his teeth. So this is what he walked into. And his name was Joe O'Connor, and he had left Clorox under mysterious circumstances. Usually it's because they're no good or they did something very immoral or something. But we didn't know. Anyway, I interviewed him. I really liked him, but I didn't really trust that. He had already been offered the job to head sales at Interplac, for $300,000 a year or some big salary and all this. But he was interested. He liked the idea this was a new company. He was an entrepreneur. He was a total maverick. They hated him at Clorox, but he was the biggest sales guy they had because he would do what he wanted when he wanted it. He ended up getting fired because he screwed too many people's wives that he shouldn't have been.
Is that really? But so he's a good salesman.
But after I went down to Walmart, and he and his wife had to make a decision. They're going to take the Interplac job that was secure at a big company, or take a chance. Now, the deal I offered him was 5% ownership that he could earn. It'd probably take him 4 or 5 years, but he could earn up to 5%
Of your
ownership,
company.
But I'd only pay him $125 a year. And at the end of the 2 weeks, he decided to do it, to come with us.
Wow.
Well, he's not only one of my closest friends now, and he's the greatest salesman I've ever seen. He's had so many buyers that when he meets them, they can't stand him, who ends up, they love him. He's their best friend.
Can I ask you what makes him so good?
First of all, he's fearless. Second of all, he was always great when there's a problem. He doesn't, a lot of salespeople, when there's a problem, favor the retailer because that's their bread and butter in their careers, the retailer, not the factory or the company they work for. He always looked to find a way that worked for both, that worked, that made sense. But in the end, the buyers all socialized with him. They went on vacations with him. Things a lot of them weren't.
He's a likable guy.
He was a very likable guy.
Personable, yeah, for sure.
Handsome guy?
Girls thought so. Yeah, he was. He still is a ladies' man. But anyway, he came to work for us. We did our first year with him. We did $44 million. He made all 5%. And I had decided, I knew that I had to sell this before the big guys got into it. And knowing that our name, we were called Dr. John's SpinBrush. John's because it was not just me, but 2 of the other designers were named John. So it was John's plural.
Makes sense.
So,
Makes sense.
Nobody knew that. It was my name. But I figured that we had, for me to create a brand that would mean something to consumers would take me at least 3 years to have it a known, SpinBrush as a known brand. And I thought right now, and we had chosen Procter Gamble from day one as our target to sell this company to. Day one, they needed us. Their stock was down. Crest went to number 2 after 30 years ahead of Total as toothpaste, and everything about the company needed this product. And I grew up in Cincinnati, where they're located, and we used to go to every kid in Cincinnati went to the Ivory Soap factory growing up.
Ivory Soap, wow.
So we were talking about this last night. How do you sell a company? Well, if you try to sell your company, you get one amount of money, and if a company wants to buy you, you get as much as 10 times that amount of money if they want to buy you as opposed to you wanting them to buy you. And so I went to I figured they didn't even know who we were because even though we were the number 1 selling toothbrush, it was by store. So you had to get this report that told you that we were selling multiples better than anybody else's. But these guys all go home at night. They get the reports every month and a half, and there's so many products they don't even pay attention to it. So I went into their licensing department with the appearing to be interested in licensing the Crest name for our product, which was absurd. I didn't think in a million years they'd do that. But we wanted to show them who we were. And so I went in there and I passed toothbrushes out to everybody there.
So this is how you get in the door because, okay, so you want to sell your company to Procter & Gamble, but you don't want to say, hey, we're for sale.
Right.
But you want them to become aware. So you decide to call up Procter & Gamble and say, we're interested in licensing one of your brands, the Crest brand for us. So that gets you in the door. Now they're going, wow, you're doing this much in sales?
And, wow, we didn't even know about your product, which they even admitted.
Yeah.
But they looked at the sheets and saw what we were doing. So they brought the brand people in from Crest, and they agreed to test it. So they're testing it to see if we can license the Crest name. Now, one, I didn't think in a million years they would do that. And if they did, it would be at a royalty that would make us too expensive. So as I mentioned last night, that a month goes by, nothing. Don't hear from them. 2 months, 3 months. Finally, I decided, well, this obviously isn't happening. I might as well call them. What do I got to lose? And I called the guy in the licensing, and I said, I didn't hear from you, so I didn't. He says, we thought you were going to call us. It's like we're both waiting.
Yep.
And it turned out, and I didn't know it, that it tested higher than any product in the history of Procter & Gamble with consumers. The tests that they did.
You think
I
they'd
didn't
call
know
you.
this. I didn't know it.
Yeah.
And he said, we've tested it, and we decided we'll license you the name. Now, I don't want to license their name. I just wanted them to want to buy us.
Absolutely.
So I said, oh my God, I'm so honored. That's so exciting. But just so you know, we can't pay some 10 or 13% or something you have to do for Mickey Mouse or major brands. I said, we couldn't pay more than 3% and keep our price. And he said, well, let me get back to you. And he calls me back a few days. He says, okay, we'll do 3%.
Oh, God.
And I was sitting there saying, holy shit, what do I do now? So I said, God, I kept saying, I'm so honored. I don't think I've ever said that much in my life. And I said, well, let me go back to our board.
Okay.
And let me talk to the board and see what, And then I came back to him a few days later. I said, I'm really embarrassed, but I talked to our board. And as I said, we're so honored. But I said, but ultimately, the investors and the board and all this, their interest is ultimately in selling this company, and they feel that if they licensed it with the Crest name, they would have they couldn't sell it to anybody but you, and you'd have all the leverage to buy it. So they can't do it. I said, I'm sorry for taking up your time, and then he said, oh, well, why don't we buy your company?
Oh,
And I hit myself in the head and said, oh my God. Why didn't I think of that? Anyway, it went from there. We negotiated on contracts for some months and due diligence and everything. And eventually...
How long did the sales process take?
It took some months, maybe...
Like 6 months or...
6 or less, maybe 3 to 6. I can't
3 to
remember.
6 months, yeah.
But because they had to do a lot of due diligence with the factories and worldwide patent searches.
Sure.
We had 2 great patents. And they, and they're a big company. So
was this when you finally sell the company? Was that like? Would you consider that your best day in business?
Well, from most successful financial day in business. But there's something I learned from that too, and that is, here I'm negotiating with Procter Gamble. Now that in itself is a little of an overwhelming thought. I'm negotiating with Procter Gamble, but I wasn't really. I'm sitting at a table in my lawyer's office, or their lawyer, I can't remember, and there's the lawyers. I had a couple associates with me that worked for the company, and they had the one guy who was in charge of this and a couple other people, and it was really just 2 people playing poker. It was not, that it's so grand, the thought that you're negotiating with Procter & Gamble. How could I do that when it's just me and this guy negotiating? We're playing the same game as you're playing when you say, I got 3 of a kind, and he says he got 2 pair.
And,
that's something I want to say is, the best negotiators I find are the people who are real closers or usually have a background in poker. I sold this guy's company in Ohio for a lot of money, and he was a poker player all day. That's what he did when he wasn't running his business. He played poker.
I knew most of the poker players in Ohio. I don't know if I know.
I'll tell you his name off camera.
Okay.
But he would. I would always say, "You're crazy for why are you telling them this? This is they're gonna walk away." He goes, "Let them."
Okay. But it's the same negotiation as a poker game, because what you're doing in poker is you're trying to disguise your truth and you're trying to read his, and he's trying to disguise it. So you're both trying to get rid of your patterns. In this case, where you're negotiating for the first time, you don't know patterns like you do when you play against the same guy every week in a poker game. But and it's one place which you're expected and you're allowed to lie or bullshit or expand the truth, whatever it is, because it's just the nature of it. And you're all trying to find that point that's okay for both of you. Here's okay. We're willing to pay this. We're willing to accept this. And it involves a lot of game playing. But it's fun, too.
Right.
Can I ask you this question? Beyond profit, how do you personally measure success?
Well, as a business, I don't think there's another way, purely as a business. So, I could say, well, I ran the toy business. It failed, but I was creative. I had fun. I had kids. I worked. I employed people. I could come up with stuff like that. But I basically, if I'm advising somebody in a business, if you want to be in a nonprofit or you want to be in a charity, that's something else. But even nonprofits have to make a profit.
They have to make a profit also.
Or you can't stay in business. But so I think that really comes down to it. It doesn't mean that you're limited in all the joy and the excitement, the creativity, that you get from doing a business. You get all that, but it does have to be successful in relation to your aim, whatever that is.
What's one of your favorite business books that you would recommend to a upcoming entrepreneur?
I don't have any business. I was never a book guy.
You learn by doing. Yeah.
I wrote a thing called 17 Mistakes Entrepreneurs Don't Have to Make. I actually don't remember them all, but they're on the internet.
Okay.
And,
I can find it on.
They use it at the Harvard Business School.
Oh, okay.
And they're just things that I did before the SpinBrush company, where I looked back at all the things that I had done successfully and failed at within, and put down the things that so many entrepreneurs that start off make these same mistakes that you don't have to. So I put those down. I should go back and read what they are, but
we can find it.
But it was very useful to me doing the SpinBrush company.
Yeah. We'll wrap up soon.
Right,
But my question is that do you think any of this spiritual practice that you were doing in Warwick, New York, impacted how you did business at all?
I can't tell you how much. It's especially as I've gotten older. When I had my toy company, virtually every company, but the toy company, I remember I would have problems. If you're really doing business, you have problems. You can't not have them. Although our SpinBrush only had one time that had a problem, but
it seems like you've had pretty
no, but within
frictionless.
But that's
amazing.
because we've got a
limited time.
A small version
of
my life. We've taken 79 years and we're putting it in an hour. So, but I'd have problems that were way beyond my experience and intelligence, both. Where I give an example of one of our biggest problems. We had done a game called Nolan Ryan Strike Zone Baseball that we did with Nolan Ryan. It was really cool game. And I'm in July. It was July 4th, I remember. I was sitting at home, and we're supposed to start shipping these things in late September for Christmas. And we've had some problems where you play the game, and suddenly, every once in a while, it would start over in the middle of the game, and I couldn't figure it out. So I sat there on the couch playing the game with my hand. It was a game you'd actually pitch a ball into and everything, but I did it with my finger, and I found out, and I had these lineups that would play, that every time an inning ended with this one player, the game would start over. It was just a freak in the chip that they made. And so I've got my big Christmas item for the company defective. And I have to figure out what to do. I'll give you one more example, and then I'll tell you the solution to both. When I did the crawl spaces, the crawl space baby product.
Yeah, babies.
We made that with these nylon clips that would fit into the end of tubing, so it would ratchet it, and it would stay in any position, and you could ratchet it close. Well, it turned out that they'd be in the factory, and about 2 weeks into it, these ratchets were breaking. I had a whole warehouse full of these product. What do I do? So these are two problems that you can't imagine the pain of it, but what do I do? What do I do? My biggest toy, I got the whole industry, I got the bank, I got the investors, I got my company, I got this baby product. I told everyone we're switching from energy to this baby product. They're all defective. And what I found, I don't even know how I found it, but I found that I'd sit down on my couch after I cried for a little while. Don't get me wrong. I'd sit on my couch and I would just say to myself, or out loud, it didn't matter, what do I do? And then I would be quiet. I wouldn't think of the answer. I wouldn't do anything, but just ask the question. And 100% of the time, I got the answer. I knew exactly what to do, what the best solution. It didn't mean it was fixed, that the product was. I knew exactly what to do.
It was inside you.
Now, where does it come from? Is it a higher part of my brain? Is it God? Is it self in an Eastern religion? I have no idea. I know that it was beyond the capability of my thinking and my experience thinking and my mind. And if I would be quiet and ask the question, I would get the answer. And I found that I got this for my entire rest of my career anytime I had a problem. It didn't mean I didn't have a fit or get upset when I had a big problem and forget about it for a few minutes, and then I remember it. And I got the answer every time, sometimes within seconds, sometimes at the latest within a day. And it got to the point where we called it the magic. And people who work for me, when we'd have these big problems, they'd send me into my office. Go in your office and ask the magic, they say. And I even felt like I was cheating.
So can I ask you, is this like you close your eyes and you meditate?
I could close my eyes, open my eyes, it didn't matter.
You would just sit there quietly
I
and
would
it
be
would
quiet. I'd ask the question. I wouldn't think the answer. I would just be quiet and allow the answer. And
Can I ask regarding your habits? Like, do you have any non-negotiable daily habits or routines that you do that have
I get up
contributed to
very
your success?
early in the morning and I sit. But I'm not a believer in necessarily a person needing to sit to be meditate or to be in a posture or whatever, because that wouldn't be fair. Not everyone can do that. I think that what anybody would seek in a meditation is available at any time. And it's basically a being quiet and in a way kind of letting go of the influence of all of our thinking and mind and past concerns of the future, all of this stuff, and being quiet. And for whatever reason, it's difficult to remember to do. It's difficult to do. But it's in a way, it's changed my whole life. And it's something that I seek. But it wasn't anything necessarily I was going to talk about in the interview, because for anybody, it's a very personal experience. But I am a great believer that there is so much more available to us. I don't know where that comes from, but available to all of us if we're quiet and we ask for that help. And again, it could be a higher part of the brain. It could be, as people call God, it could be in Eastern religion, self or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's the availability of something far greater that I thought I was cheating. I remember I did an interview with a pod, and I said, I forgot to hear one thing. All these years that I had these successes, I cheated. And it was like, wait a minute, why are we interviewing you?
Yeah.
And in a way it was, because people would say, oh, that was so smart of you. Oh, you're intelligent, all this. And I was not intelligent enough to think of it. I could only get it by being quiet. And it was like an intelligence that was provided, that were not part of my background or training.
That's amazing.
So anyway, I guess when I go back to Harvard, I'm going back in late January to do the class. I haven't done it for 5 years, after 18 straight years. I have never talked about this before, but I think I will bring up just that, because it's available to everybody. It's not being special. Yeah. It's that anybody, if we just be quiet and relax and ask for help, oddly enough, it's available. And it's hard to believe.
Well, because, today it's hard to be alone by yourself because you got the phone, and this takes, you're so distracted that people don't really tune in and listen to what's going on inside. So I do think that's an amazing skill. It's something I practice too. Try to be quiet by myself for 15 minutes, and I found that gets me through. So maybe one day I'll have a big success like you, but it gets me through.
But it's almost why it's easier to do in the middle of the night when I walk to the bathroom, or when I get up at 5 a.m, when there are less distractions in life. It's just easier to focus. It's not that time is any different than any time, but it's less. Then you get out in life and people, hey, how you doing? What's going on? And all this and that, and we're trained to not look deeper. We're trained that way. Since we were young, we've been given a name and a job and opinions and political opinions. I became a liberal because my parents voted for Adlai Stevenson in 1957. The neighbors across the street voted for Eisenhower, and they became conservatives. Their whole lives. Well, it's not like it was born that way. It's just we get trained a certain way.
Right.
And I find kind of letting go of training. And
my favorite filmmaker, David Lynch, he says the same thing. He attributes all his success to that. He calls it transcendental meditation, but to me, it's the same thing you're talking about.
Well, I think anybody could say the same thing because it's available to anybody. But the biggest problem we have is, for the most part, including myself, we're not interested, or we're so enamored with who we are and how we are that we can't even conceive of letting go of that.
I think we definitely need to do a part 2, but you know, this is there's right now you've set the record. It's our longest interview.
our longest
But
interview,
we'll wrap it up with some of your wrap up questions.
First question, just to wrap this up. Do you think you're famous?
It's the We're Not Famous podcast.
Famous is an interesting thing because it really depends who you're talking to. You can be famous in the toy industry. I became best friends with a guy who was the most famous jockey of all time.
Howard Stern?
No, Jerry Bailey.
Oh,
He
Jerry
won
Bailey,
7
yeah.
straight years of. He became one of my closest friends. He lived on my street, but I never heard of him before. And as he said, if you're not into horse racing, you never heard of me.
Oh, jockey. I thought you meant this jockey.
No, jockey.
Jockey, yeah.
I went to the track with him, and it was like being with God. Everyone's doing like they did in Coming to America when he came out of the bathroom.
Absolutely.
And so everything is relative. I have a boat. I love my boat, and I captain it and everything. And people said to me, "Is your boat big?" And I said, "Well, it depends who I'm docked next to." and that's basically the way everything is in life.
What's your definition of being famous?
I don't know that I would ever think of it. And first of all, it's only useful to be famous in your own circle.
We haven't heard that one before. That's deep. Famous. And in this stage of life, what would you say you're personally focusing on?
What's that?
In this stage of life, what are you personally focusing on?
I focus very differently than I did at other stages because I can say at 79, and I've had a very good life, that this is the best time of my life. But I also know that my days are limited. That at 79, I've got a whole lot of friends now who are Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dying of different diseases that you don't have when you're younger. You have a little bit, but not much. But as we get older, it happens all the time, and you realize it's the truth for me too. So my focus really is on a daily basis. I know people say, well, how was your year? Go back and look at the year. I don't think in those terms anymore. You really think of how you spend your day, how much you increase that connection with being quiet, as you were talking about. But very different from when I was younger, when you have to make a living for your family and you have friends and you want to become somebody, all these different things. They kind of become meaningless over time. Not because they are meaningless, it's just they're no longer meaning to me at my age.
Interesting.
John, thank you for sitting down with us. I think this was incredible.
A lot of insights.
A lot of great insights, helpful for other entrepreneurs, helpful for people in life in general. And love to have you for part 2 one day.
Well, I want you to know it's helpful for me too. There's something about looking back at my own life that has value today and how I live it. So I appreciate this opportunity very much.
Well, thank you. This was We're Not Famous with Sam and Jernavis and our guest, John Osher.
Yes.
Happy New Year. Signing out.